Today we're diving into one of the coolest inventions in human history, cuneiform writing, the world's very first writing system. This isn't just a collection of ancient symbols on clay, it's where recorded human history truly begins. Let's go back over 5,000 years to a region called Mesopotamia, which today is mostly Iraq. The people who lived there were the Sumerians. They built the first cities, developed organized farming, and traded goods with one another. But they faced a problem. They needed a way to keep records, how much grain was stored, who owned which land, and who owed taxes. At first, they used simple pictures. For example, they would draw a small cow to mean cow, or a jar to mean beer. Yet as their society grew more complex, these drawings were no longer sufficient. So the Sumerians began simplifying the shapes, pressing them into soft clay tablets with a reed stylus. The marks looked like little wedges or nails, which is why we call it cuneiform, from the Latin word for wedge-shaped. This was the birth of writing, the first time humans could permanently record their thoughts. It's hard to overstate how monumental that was. Over time, other civilizations in the region, such as the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, adopted and adapted cuneiform for their own languages. It spread far beyond Sumer, across the entire Middle East. Even completely unrelated languages, like Elamite in ancient Iran and Hittite in Turkey, used it in their own ways, much like how our modern alphabet works for many different languages. Now let's talk about how they actually wrote. They would take a lump of wet clay, flatten it into a tablet, and press those wedge-shaped symbols into it with a stylus. Once the tablet dried in the sun or was baked in a kiln, it became as hard as brick. That is why so many of these tablets have survived for thousands of years. They are practically indestructible. Initially, each symbol stood for an entire word, but later the system evolved so that each sign represented a sound or a syllable. This made it much more flexible and easier to use for complex languages. Cuneiform was not limited to business or record keeping. It was also used for literature, religion, and science. Some of the oldest known stories in the world, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, were written in cuneiform. There were also texts on medicine, astronomy, law, and even mathematics. Babylonian scholars used it to track planetary movements and predict eclipses long before telescopes existed. So what about Iran? When the Persian Empire rose under Darius the Great, they created a simpler version of cuneiform for Old Persian. You can still see it on famous monuments like Behistun, Persepolis, and Pasargadae. Unlike the older, far more complex versions that had hundreds of signs, Persian cuneiform needed only about 36 symbols. Pretty clever. Now here's the twist. After thousands of years of use, cuneiform slowly faded away. As newer, easier alphabetic scripts like Aramaic and Greek became popular, people stopped using it. By around the 1st century BCE, no one could read or write cuneiform anymore. It literally vanished from human memory. Fast forward to the 1800s. European explorers in Persia came across enormous inscriptions carved into cliffs, covered in strange wedge-like marks. One of these was the Behistun inscription, created by Darius the Great. It contained the same text in 3 languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian, all written in cuneiform. Scholars like Georg Friedrich Grotefend and Henry Rawlinson spent years comparing them, slowly cracking the code. By the mid-19th century, cuneiform was finally deciphered, and for the first time in over 2,000 years, we could once again hear the voices of ancient Mesopotamia. That discovery changed everything. It gave us access to thousands of clay tablets, contracts, laws, love letters, prayers, and even jokes. Suddenly, the people of 5,000 years ago no longer felt so distant. We could see their hopes, fears, and stories, all preserved in clay. So where exactly was cuneiform used? Mostly across what is now Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Turkey. It began in Sumer, spread to Babylon and Assyria, reached Elam in southwestern Iran, and even made its way to the Hittites in Anatolia. Some cities, like Ugarit in modern Syria, even developed their own alphabetic form of cuneiform, a clever bridge between the old systems and the alphabets we use today. Today, cuneiform is not just a museum relic, it is a symbol of human creativity and our enduring desire to preserve knowledge. Without it, we would have no written history, literature, or law as we know them. It was the foundation of civilization itself. So next time you type a message or write in your notebook, remember that it all started with a few wedge marks pressed into clay thousands of years ago. That is the real beginning of human storytelling. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.